Hey, this is Lou Perez, and you are listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
All right, everyone, thank you for joining the Matt Balaker podcast. We have executive producer to the stars, Eric Servone, joining us. How you doing, Eric?
Great. I love that title. I didn't know I was getting such a formal title. Now I'm really excited.
I figure you're due for a promotion. So
Appreciate it.
for those who are unfamiliar with this format, we invite guests on who are experts in something. We ask them to simplify it in tiny, digestible morsels, and then we free ride off it for our own benefit. And if you guys get something out of it too, that's cool. So today we're pretty stoked because we have a mutual friend of Eric and mine. He's a comedian, podcaster, writer, boy dad, professional button pusher, all around wonderful human being, Lou Perez. Thanks for joining, Lou.
Thanks for having me. What a wonderful introduction.
So I understand you guys have some history. Can you divulge?
Me and Eric, just so everyone knows. Yeah, Eric and I, we went on a date in South Dakota to see Mount Rushmore during Freedom Fest.
And how was
Romantic
that?
South Dakota.
Yeah. What was it like, Eric? Was it your first time at Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, I don't make it to South Dakota all that often, so glad I could share the trip with you.
It was my first time in South Dakota. We were there. I was there. We were both there for Freedom Fest. I was performing, doing some stand up, and then I originally had a car. I was going to rent a car because I was going to bring my family with me. But the week before, my wife and he was an infant, took our first trip together since COVID hit to California. And both my wife and my infant, when we landed, got incredibly sick. They caught just like the worst bugs whatsoever. At one point, we were in the hotel, and I was in the bathroom, and all I heard was like what sounded like a bucket of water being dumped on the floor. and I came into the room, and it was my son. He had just vomited all over my wife. So it was almost like instantaneous. It was almost like one of those really, terrible, like catastrophe movies where like a virus just goes real quick. So she was basically knocked out for the day. And then a few days later, she got food poisoning. So she was knocked out again. And it was like, you know what? Maybe boy dad Lou will have to do Freedom Fest in South Dakota by himself.
Yeah, sometimes as a father, you just got to leave the family at home sometimes,
Yeah, just leave them behind, But I was, but although that would have been a really good excuse, or just like a nice play to just abandon them outright. It's just like, yeah, my dad just got lost in South Dakota. But yeah,
I'll see you at high school graduation, son.
Yeah. If you're a big basketball player or something like that, I'll come back into your life.
Come around.
But so I was originally, I originally had rented a car, ended up canceling it. And then I was basically stranded in South Dakota. But Eric did the really smart thing. He had a car, and he was very kind to be like, hey, I've never been to Mount Rushmore. Why don't you come? And I think we went with a friend of his. And we sampled I'm asking your viewers. Hey, viewers, have you ever been to Mount Rushmore before? That'd be amazing. Like, I'm real. My apologies to the person tuning in who really wants to change their life and really wants. And it's like,
maybe next episode.
Yeah, it's like, I guess I gotta go to Mount Rushmore. That's where my life is going to change.
Place of enlightenment.
Yeah.
I have to say, so I rented a car. When I rented that car, they said I had the last car in all of South Dakota. I guess they were out of rental. So I was the VIP driver. I'm the producer to the VIPs, and I was also the VIP driver. So I was driving around all of the most important libertarians in America. I mean, I had Michael Shermer in the car. I had Mark Skousen, who was running Freedom Fest. And at one point, someone ran a red light while I was going through the intersection. We almost got sideswiped. I almost had the entire the 5 most important libertarians in America almost got wiped out thanks to me. So,
and that would have zero impact on any policy decision.
That's true. That's true.
Without Michael Shermer, I mean,
what would we do?
Where's Dave Smith?
People would just believe in myths. There'd be no skeptics without Michael Shermer around.
Reason would have no donors. It would be very sad.
Right.
Apparently, I don't know if you remember this, Eric, but at Mount Rushmore, they have Thomas Jefferson's original recipe for vanilla ice cream.
That's right.
So we had, I had some of that.
Does it involve egg yolks or no yolks? Where does he stand on that?
I don't remember, but just in the times that we're living in, I think it's quite telling that he had a recipe for vanilla ice cream.
Ooh.
And, as opposed to chocolate. I think maybe he dipped into the chocolate ice cream.
That's Jefferson's
I'm a Rainbow
sin.
Sherbet fan, so yeah. So I saw some of the clips of your interview, Lou, that were out on your website or on your YouTube channel, and one that I'd like to get a little more color on is you were talking about an HR department with comedy, specifically comparing accountants on Twitter making jokes versus professional comedians making jokes. So enlighten us, please.
Sure. So I'm someone who thinks that we live in a really amazing time for communication, and also in particular doing comedy. It used to be, and Matt, you wrote a biography about Greg Giraldo. You're a comedian yourself. You know how it is, like how it was 20, 30 years ago, where it was sort of this is the path that you go on if you want to be a comedian. You do stand up, you get passed at the clubs, maybe you get some late night spots, maybe that leads into a sitcom, et cetera, and you just keep moving that way. And thankfully for people who perhaps aren't Greg Giraldo or comedians of higher caliber, it's much easier now with technology to break into comedy. You don't have to just be doing stand up. You don't have to be a club comedian. You can be a YouTuber. You could be making even TikTok. Mm-hmm. And so there's something really great about that and really powerful about that. But the downside to it, or one of the downsides to it, is that when you open up technology, to everyone, and everyone is able to, to dip their toe into comedy, that means that comedians who do this, professionally, or at least trying to, are now competing with civilians, so it's sort of like, here are civilians putting out memes, putting out jokes. And if you have, say, for example, Kevin in accounting, who is putting, really wild jokes out there or edgy material, Kevin might have to, have a call with his HR department and might say, hey, Kevin, we really don't want you using the N-word when you're on Twitter. And it seems like something that's been happening is sort of like both civilians and real comedians are being held to those same HR standards, mm-hmm. where you have people who actually are comfortable telling comedians, take that joke down. How dare you say that?
Sure.
Get rid of that, delete that. And you're like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? I don't work for you. The goal of comedy is that I never have to work for somebody like you. I want to work for the people who want to see me do comedy. So I think that's one of the obstacles that that we're navigating nowadays.
That's a good point. And one of the lines I love that you put out there was, the point of an internet argument isn't to win, it's to waste the other person's time. And this seems like something that could waste a lot of time, but I'm curious from your own experiences, what topic or topics waste people's time the best? Oh man.
Well, to be fair, there is something about when you know that you're trolling, then you really know that your whole point is just to waste the other person's time. Like a recent troll that I did was apparently Jimmy Kimmel has re-sparked his rivalry with Texas Senator Ted Cruz.
Oh.
And I think he did a segment where he made fun of Ted Cruz. and Ted Cruz came, and then somebody put together this montage of when Ted Cruz played Jimmy Kimmel in one-on-one pickup basketball.
Oh, I thought that was like the olive branch. I thought.
Right. No, we thought the war was over, Ted Cruz beat Jimmy Kimmel, in this. And so I reshared this and I said, Ted Cruz's victory was a win for all Hispanics over our oppressors. Right? It did pretty well. People who know me really enjoyed that I wrote that. And
people who already liked me liked it.
Right.
Yeah. And then even Ted Cruz retweeted it. So there was a point when I put down my phone, right? And it was like, okay, this is over. And then I picked it up and I'm like, Ted Cruz retweeted. He retweeted this. This is absolutely insane. So my whole troll is, I was just thinking, we're to try to explain to somebody how ridiculous identity politics are, right? Just imagine every single time somebody criticized Ted Cruz, they were accused of being anti-Hispanic, right? So that's the game that I was playing on Twitter the other day. Every single thing that you said about Ted Cruz, most Hispanics don't even like him. No, man, that's because they've been fed lies by the colonizers, right? And it's like, you can't handle that Ted Cruz super masculine Latino, that Latin fever. You're afraid it's going to take your woman and all that, and just playing that up. So that, there's absolutely no way a person is ever going to win that argument with that character, that I'm playing.
But Lou, I wish you could put that accent in your tweets. They'd be 20% sexier just with that alone.
Oh yeah. Or a very nice place lisp,
So when you were a student at NYU years ago, did you dream one day that you're going to be trolling senators and famous late night talk show hosts, and they'll be arguing over, like, was that your goal as a young student?
No, I don't. Definitely, I don't know. It was definitely not my goal. I didn't even know that was a possibility. That's also one of the craziest things about social media, is that somehow you're able to communicate with people who otherwise you shouldn't be near. I shouldn't be near any of these people. But I used to get into, I guess, little arguments here and there. I remember I was on the mailing list for the Students of Color Alliance, and I used to argue, I guess, on this.
What is the alliance for? I mean, I know the name, but what was the purpose when you were a student?
I think it was between like Blacks, Latinos. I think it was for that sort of those demographics of the student body. It was sort of a listserv to, communicate about events that were happening, and I'm sure occasionally politics would pop up and that sort of thing.
And so you're on this, and how did this, create the spark to be the provocateur you are now?
Well, I've been thinking about that, and it's sort of like, you hear that a lot, like almost as a put down, like, oh, this person's just a provocateur, or this person's just trying to be edgy, or this person's just trying to go for shock value, and it's sort of like, well, if you're a writer, if you're an artist, if you're a comedian, don't you want attention? I mean, that's really what you want to do. Isn't that the point, where you want to say something that stands alone from everything else that's being said? You want something that goes above, cheap platitudes, right? You want to, quoting, if we go back to, T.S. Eliot's The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, do I dare disturb the universe? You want to push buttons, you want to see what you can get. And I, ever since I was a kid, making my friends laugh, that was always a big part of it. In high school, I got to be an editor of the school newspaper. And
oh, nice.
I remember I remember I wrote an op-ed. I don't think I have it anymore, but I think it was titled like "Pocket Full of Posers," and it was me, and you know, this is what 1999 or something like that. So it was like calling out the posers who go to concerts and don't really like the bands. You know, I was a kid, you know,
Yeah.
but you know, I remember one kid in particular thought that I was talking to him personally. Like I was subtweeting him before, you know, subtweets even, you know, existed. Is that subtweet? I hope I used that correctly. Otherwise I'm going to sound like such a moron.
It works for me.
Yeah. But yeah,
The
I
Twitter
think
expert out of the three of us.
you know, and I think that there is something to that where it's like, no, I have, I don't mind, you know, causing a little disturbance and being a little dangerous. I don't do anything else. You know, I'm not a thrill seeker. I don't drive my car fast, man.
You don't.
Like
You respect speed limits,
dude. I like ridiculously. I respect speed limits, and this is how this is how I go wild.
This is your cheap thrill. Did you respect speed limits so much before you had kids? Because that was a huge change. Like when I had my first, all of a sudden I was like 65, stay alive, and I kept to it. But before that, I was a little more reckless. How about you?
I think it was funny in high school. I think I was pretty good. Then in college, then I started driving really fast, and then there was a while where I didn't have a car at all. Yeah, yeah, it's sort of like I've gotten a lot as I've gotten older, and just seeing how fragile life is, especially when you have, you know, 10 pounds of it in the back seat of a car. You know, you want to, you want to
Plus your kid.
Plus my kid, yeah.
Very nice. So you're pushing buttons in high school, and then you went to NYU, right?
Yeah,
an undergrad. So what compelled you to focus on writing in college?
It's sort of I originally wanted to be a poet, so I was like doing creative writing. I wanted to be
The
like
one
an
thing
English...
that pays less than stand-up comedy.
oh yeah. What a you know, I was always destined for, you know, incredible success. Yeah, I wanted to be a poet because I was an English major and I was kind of into that. And then at some point, I think it was in the post 9/11 years, because 9/11 happened on my sophomore year of college. I I wanted to do improv. I'd never done improv before, and I'm like, oh, I'd like to give this a shot. And then improv led to sketch comedy, and I wasn't that big on sketch comedy as a performer because I didn't like to memorize lines. I don't know. I just wasn't. I was like, oh, improv's cool because you don't have to know.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's like. But then, you know, performing in shows and getting like, you know, really good responses from the audience with the, you know, the few lines that I had, and then writing my own material is like, oh, I really like this. And that was sort of, excuse me, that was the real like eureka moment where it's like, oh, I want to do this. I want to create my own stuff and have people look at me while I'm doing it.
And did you ever consider just dropping out of school to do this, or do you finish it, right? Can you?
Yeah. I finished. So I was fortunate that I had a partial academic scholarship. So
Smarty pants.
Smart, I know. And I always did very well in school, so it wasn't like it wasn't a real struggle. And like the first couple of years, I think freshman year was tough because I was really, you know, down on a girl, and, you know, I was like a high school girlfriend. And like, I think I lost a lot of weight. I did the opposite of a freshman 15. I think I lost weight. And then sophomore year, 9/11 happened, which, you know, was pretty bad.
Yeah.
You know, pretty bad for a lot of people. And then junior year and senior, that's when I really started enjoying my academics. And then, so there wasn't a time when I'm like, oh, I want to drop out or anything like that.
So did NYU help land you writing jobs?
No, I don't think NYU helped me, but I think being a member of the Hammer Cats, my sketch group, helped me. Yeah, I mean, mostly in the form of performing at the UCB theater, and then having that, sort of on my resume, would help me later in life.
So the Hammer Cats propelled you. So what were your first writing jobs after college?
Oh, well, the first writing job after college wasn't comedic at all. It was I wrote erotic fiction.
Wait, slow down and say it a little slower.
I wrote erotic fiction.
Thank you.
His hair was long in a ponytail, and he wrote erotic fiction. Yeah, so it's funny when I'm looking at looking back on my young acting and writing career. While other people had managers and agents, I was going to like Craigslist and seeing what was available. And I think I booked a few like background roles and stuff, $100 here and there. And then I saw this one gig pop up on Craigslist where it said, "Do you want to get paid to write and edit erotic fiction?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. Who wouldn't want to do it?" Yeah. So they asked for your resume. So
only the best. We usually only take Ivy Leaguers, but maybe we'll accept an NYU grad.
Yeah, that would be funny if there's sort of like the way that SNL and The Simpsons had like that Harvard,
right. Sure, sort of the Lampoon pipeline,
that pedigree. Yeah. So they got me for this for this erotic fiction thing. So I'd never written erotic fiction before. I wrote a really weird. I wrote a short story in college for one of my workshops where I think it was called "Gorilla in His Swings" or something like that.
I love it already.
Oh my God! And I have a buddy of mine named Shane who to this day reminds me of that story. Like he'll be like, "Hey, dude, you remember when you wrote this story? It's about a guy who's going through a divorce, and then he goes to Central Park, and there's this weird menagerie thing going on, and he watches a gorilla have sex with a woman, and that somehow helps him get over his relationship." It's something that like a 21
better than Hagen does, right?
Did you take that from personal experience? Where did that story come from?
I don't know, but I think one of my teachers pointed out, he's like, "Yeah, gorillas don't even have that big of penises, right? Why would you even pick that?
Pick a different primate, man."
Yeah, exactly. So other than that, I don't remember writing anything erotic or sexy like that. So I had to write a sample of a story and then send it all in. So the story that I wrote was from the point of view of a young kid working in a legal age, working in a grocery store as a bag boy. It's like he bags, groceries, and he's totally in love with this black cashier named Loquacious. And so it's just sort of like his desire for Loquacious and all that. Again, I'm really wondering all the people who tuned in to learn like, hey,
they want to know. How do I write erotic fiction?
Yeah.
So besides Eric and me, who are the readers of this?
I want a copy.
Well, that's the thing. So I send it in. I don't expect to hear anything back. And I get an email back. We'd love to have you come in for an interview. So it's an office building in downtown Manhattan, and they have like an entire floor. And then I go and interview with the woman who runs it. It's a mostly female staff that runs this stuff.
Okay.
She offers me the job on the spot, and I'm like, great. And I start the next week. And it turns out they were producing magazines and stuff. But their main selling point were these erotic digests that they used to have a mailing list of the people of the guys that they would send this to. It was very male oriented.
So they would actually print it out. These weren't PDFs or
email. Yeah, it wasn't PDFs. Can I go? I think I have one in my closet. I could show
you.
Yes,
Yeah. Let me go. One sec.
Eric and
I'm loving
but
this.
my hands are up here for now. Just
So these are a few of the ones of the digests that I would write. So you would have Naughty Night, Housewives Confessions.
I remember
Never
that
heard
one.
of this. What year was this?
Forbidden Letters. Oh, this is probably, let's see, I graduated 04, so maybe like 05.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe 04, 05, or 06 or something like that.
So this isn't like trashy romance. This is like 18 and up in the
this is
the curtain section in the liquor store kind of thing.
Dude, this is gross. This is some of the grossest shit you've ever read in your life. Family taboos. Come on, man.
Okay. Can we kind of
I know, yeah. Can we as a father, I would like
I was still in my dad's Maxims at that point. I'm not familiar with this entire genre. This is fascinating.
Playboy seems so wholesome now.
Yeah.
I'm vindicated.
So we had, there was a mailing list of, guys who would read. I remember writing the Sex Olympics. That was one of mine. My wife took home the gold. So that's what, oh my God. You bleep stuff out? I don't want to be trouble for you guys. Oh God.
Just say it. We'll figure it out later.
Clit poker. I mean, what is that? What does that even mean? Is it a person who pokes it, or is it like a poker that
leaves it to the imagination?
Yeah.
A male might have one point of view, a lady might have a different. It's
right, exactly.
Kind of beautiful.
So I was writing these things, and I'm a comedian too. So it's sort of like I have to have fun with these things, and so, I mean, part of having fun with it was like basically using the first name of every person in my life, so it's like using my mother's first name. So there's a story here with Florence. There's, Lorraine, my aunt, using her name and stuff like that. So, so I think part of, kind of bringing it back to, this idea of trying to get a reaction from people, sort of whether I'm on stage or I am, writing erotic fiction for a few months. Mm-hmm. I'm writing to an audience that I need to get a response from, and in this case, I need to write stuff that guys are turned on by, that guys are like, yeah, man, this is a sexy story. I'm really into this. I totally believe this story.
Wow. So that brings up an interesting point. Not the sexy story part, but the wanting to get a reaction. So, for those interested, please check out louperez.com because you're a very talented, not only stand-up but also sketch writer. How would you break down, Lou, what's actually your point of view versus when you're just trying to get a rise out of people? Because obviously, and I know you well enough where some of it's just you, and then some is, you're poking the bear a little bit. So. Can you quantify that for us?
Yeah. So, and I definitely, I've gotten better at, separating myself from this because it's one of these things where, oh, you put out a joke here and then you put out something here that you're kind of serious about. And then people come at you for the serious thing and then you get offended. It's like, well, it's like I'm not giving them just a straight, hey, these are just jokes, or these are just my thoughts, or anything like that. And I think what I would say is what I try to do is every now and then, if there's something that I hold particular value in, mm-hmm. I try to see how I could joke about it. What is a way to joke about it? So one of the things I would say, and this might be one of the first, sort of public forums where I say, I'm pro-life. I'm a pro-lifer. I haven't been that way my whole life. I was, pro-choice years ago, and it's relatively new, I guess, compared to other people. I'm a pro-life person. So for me, abortion has become something that's, a very serious topic, something that I hold strong views on, right? And something that I found was when I was seeing comedians making jokes about abortion, oftentimes the jokes were done by people who were pro-choice and more
Probably
specifically.
99.78% of the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. And you have some women doing one-person shows about it and comedic shows and that sort of thing. And something that I was just thinking is like, man, I think these jokes would be a lot stronger if they actually believed it was murder, you know? And even just as a just as like sort of an exercise, if you're out there and you want to write a joke, like, what if you really believed it was murder? Then what would that do to the jokes that you're telling? So I'm at a point where I'm making abortion jokes, and you know what? I actually think it's murder, right? So it's sort of it's a challenge for me to come up with a joke,
Sure.
but then also I'm sort of uh, it's not a flip sort of thing, It's not like
You can't dismiss it as quickly as another topic.
Yeah, yeah, and what's funny, but a few years ago, I put a joke out where I said, I no longer give up my seat on the subway to pregnant women because it's just a clump of cells, honey, something like that. And I had an old professor of mine get into the comment section and call me vile and said, you're trying to shock people and you're vile and blah blah blah. And then I said, well, it's funny, the kicker is I'm pro-life, and I know for a fact this man is not. Right. So it was really interesting where it's sort of like, wow, this really upset you, and I know where your politics are on it. And for me, it was making the joke from a place of discomfort,
Sure.
my own discomfort.
Well, I think usually that's when the best comedy happens. It's not like we're all 72 degrees and smiling and well fed. It's like there should be some tension and some pain, and you hit on that well. So my hat's off to you, Lou. Very, very, very well done. So you've had a pretty eclectic body of work. I mean, from erotic fiction to being in the Wall Street Journal. What are some projects that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, there are quite a few sketches that I'm proud of in my. Is it Ouvre, Ouvre, Ouvre?
You're the literary guy.
I'll
defer to you. I was like,
my You've.
You've, yeah.
I think my body of work. Yeah, there's a lot of sketches that I'm proud of. The big thing that I'm proud of, that I'm looking forward to, is my first book, and it's going to be coming out in 2022, and it's sort of like 20 years in the making, where it's kind of like my 20 years of doing comedy, and it was an opportunity for me to reflect on that and just see like, well, what's been going on with comedy over the past 5 or 6 years, and my goal of it is to sort of be like a white pill for comedy, and just let people know, like, no, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to, and there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done, and a lot of joy to come out of what's happening in comedy. It's called That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. So it comes from
That joke isn't funny. I like that. So is it essentially an autobiography?
Yeah, there's there's anecdotes, then there's anecdotes, commentary.
I like that approach because it's really easy, and I'm sure I'm guilty of this, to kind of look at the negatives of comedy. Or, I mean, I kind of lament the pre-Twitter days where you could say things just in a club and it would only be there. I think now it's gotten so pervasive when it's lost a little bit of the speakeasy feel. But I want to hear some of your thoughts on, what excites you, and what do you think are some of the really cool things that are happening in comedy right now?
Yeah, well, I think one thing that excites me is the ability for fans to basically support the people that they love, and that they love, and whose work that they like. And, obviously we live in a culture where we just have so much free material. It's
Mhm.
just, everything is out there, whether it's, ripped and posted, online without, the artist's permission, or it's just, the artist is just putting it out there. It's just so much free stuff. And I think if anything, the past few years with, cancel culture, if you want to call it that, has shown that, look, if you have a comedian whose work you follow and you want them to be successful, but they're producing the kind of work that might get in the way of them, getting a network gig, then it's
Sure.
like, well, then, it's on you to help that person out and to support them in any way that you can. So when it comes to me, I have a locals community. So thelouperez.locals.com. And for those of you who don't know, locals, it's sort of like a Patreon Facebook hybrid,
Okay.
where people can join your community, and you don't have to worry about being put in Facebook jail or having your Twitter account suspended or anything like that. And you get to support the people whose work that you enjoy.
So how else can people support Lou Perez?
If you can sign up for my newsletter at thelouperez.com, and you can find me on basically all social media platforms. I'm even on TikTok now. I'm on Rizzle. I just joined Rizzle. I'm almost 40 and I'm on Rizzle. So yeah, you guys can find me anywhere. And once I have like the pre-order link available for my book, I hope people will dip into their pockets and order it for sure.
I definitely will. And I hope you come back when the book's released so we can properly guilt everyone to buying several copies.
Thank you. I'll have my two kids, my two boys, please, please.
Lou, go ahead, Zach.
I was just going to say my white pill is doing this. I mean, the fact that I, as a comedy fan and an amateur comic, I can hang out with someone like Lou, who I've been a fan of for years, and hang out with Matt, whose book I loved. That's my white pill, just being able to do this. So I appreciate you being here, Lou.
You're sweet. I hope you have better white pills in the future, but that's really kind. Honest. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Well, Lou, thank you for joining. Please come back, and thank you all for tuning in.